This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to Julius Caesar, Rise and Fall. This is Chapter 2, where we're diving into Caesar's legendary military campaigns in Gaul and unpacking why he decided to take on the fierce Celtic tribes in the first place. We'll explore what Caesar was really after beyond just conquest and glory, and how these brutal campaigns shaped his path to power. Let's get into it. Caesar claimed he killed and enslaved 2 million people in Gaul, an ancient body count so huge that modern historians say it's wildly inflated. So what was he really doing up there, season after season, in the cold and mud at the edge of the known world? On paper, Caesar was just a provincial governor with a few legions and a mandate to keep the peace. In practice, he turned that vague assignment into an 8-year, self-financing war that rewired the map of Western Europe and his own career. To understand how, you have to zoom in on the machinery behind the campaigns, the supply columns snaking over mountain passes, the surveyors measuring out marching camps, the officers negotiating with tribal elites over feasts and hostages. A single marching column could function like a tightly scored orchestra where engineers, scouts, and diplomats moved in and out of the melody of combat operations. And always, Caesar was writing, turning each bridge, ambush, and siege into a political pitch for audiences back in Rome who would never see Gaul but would vote on what it meant. Each campaigning season in Gaul started like a startup launch cycle. Caesar chose a target region, mapped river crossings and grain sources, then aligned operations with politics in Rome's election calendar. Weather, harvest times, and tribal festivals acted like hard deadlines, missed them, and alliances cooled or revolts flared. Crucially, his forces were relatively small for the area he meant to dominate, so speed and intimidation substituted for raw numbers. Forts, roads, and winter quarters stitched his gains together, turning temporary victories into a semi-permanent Roman operating system in Gaul. Once Caesar had his basic operating rhythm in Gaul, the real advantage came from how he fused 3 levers: logistics, tactics, and politics. Logistically, he treated rivers and grain stores as the real high ground. He pushed along major waterways, the Rhône, Saône, Seine, Loire, because boats could move food and siege equipment far more efficiently than ox carts. Towns that controlled crossings or granaries were hit first, not because they were symbolic prizes, but because they fed everyone else. By pre-positioning supplies in friendly territories and forcing hostile tribes to hand over hostages and grain, he turned Gaul's own resources into fuel for further conquest. When that system faltered, as in the winter campaigns against the Belgae, his men felt it immediately in hunger, mutiny rumors, and desperate foraging raids. On the battlefield, Caesar's legions were designed for improvisation. Standard doctrine, tight formations, heavy infantry shock, was only the baseline. Against Germanic cavalry, he reinforced his horsemen with selected legionaries trained to run in among the riders and fight at close quarters. Against fortified hilltops, he mixed rapid assaults with earthwork envelopes to starve defenders out. He even experimented with split-force operations, sending flying columns to chase raiders while the main body dug in and secured supply points. One compact marching army could pivot from field battle to river crossing to siege within days, without waiting for specialized reinforcements from Italy. Politically, every success was leveraged twice, once on the ground, once in Roman perception. Defeated tribes were not always destroyed, they were reorganized. Client kings were installed, borders redrawn, hostages rotated. Enemy coalitions, like the Grand Revolt under Vercingetorix, formed partly in reaction to how fast this new Roman order was spreading. Yet those same coalitions were made brittle by old rivalries that Caesar carefully stroked, rewarding one tribe with spoils, slighting another, keeping any united Gaul mostly a slogan from his own narrative rather than a permanent reality on the ground. Caesar's campaigns in Gaul look very different when you zoom in on individual episodes instead of reading his commentary as one smooth success story. Take his first clash with the Helvetii. On the page, it's a confident stand at the Rhône, In practice, he was scrambling to block a migratory column that, if ignored, could reshape power balances all the way into Italy. Later, in Brittany, he faced coastal tribes who used light ships and local tides to harass his supply lines, forcing Roman engineers to rethink harbor security instead of just building another textbook camp. Even Alesia, remembered as a flawless double-wall masterpiece, began as a gamble against time, weather, and foraging range for tens of thousands of men and animals. A medical parallel fits here. Each tribe was a different case, with its own symptoms, history, and risk factors, and Caesar's real distinction was his ability to diagnose and adjust treatment before the patient turned terminal for Roman interests. Caesar's Gaul is a reminder that military tech isn't just weapons, it's systems thinking. He learned to read terrain, tribes, and timing the way a good conductor reads a score, bringing in different sections exactly when needed. Today, that same fusion of data, force, and narrative can turn local victories into global leverage. As LiDAR and new digs surface Gallic voices, we may find his clean storyline fraying, an early case study in how empires edit their own receipts. Gaul became Caesar's lab, each campaign a prototype, each tribe a new user group to test how far Roman systems could stretch. The twist is that his experiment never really ended, it just shifted arenas, from forests and river crossings to Senate debates and city streets, like a battlefield compressed into the circuitry of Roman politics. Before next week, ask yourself, how would I have responded if I were a Gallic tribal leader facing Caesar's demand for hostages? Would I negotiate, resist, or seek alliances, and why? If I map Caesar's route through Gaul on a modern map today, what patterns do I notice about where he chose to fight, winter, or build forts, and what does that reveal about his priorities? Looking at one key decision, like the siege of Alesia or the massacre at the Sabis, what moral line would I personally draw in that situation, and how does that challenge the way I usually think about necessary force or leadership in crises? This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. To keep learning with structured courses and more insights, go to owlup.co. Until tomorrow!